So this is how forest policy has evolved in India. ये concept अगर आपको समझ आ गया है, so now you will understand कि act में क्या क्या हो रहा है. In every act you will understand कि हाँ, these were the socio-economic conditions and this is what is happening. यहाँ पे 2-3 और चीजें होती हैं बीच में. The 2-3 other things that happen is at this point here, at this point there is the Stockholm Conference. In the Stockholm Conference, it is a conference called the UN Conference on Human Environment. This happens in the 1970s. In 1970s, Srimati Indira Gandhi, our Prime Minister, and the Swedish Prime Minister. These are the only two Prime Ministers to attend this conference. Baki, every other nation sends not their head of state, but some other lowly official. Indira Gandhi ji was a visionary. She attends this conference and understands that dekho, this is very important. So in 1970s, when she attends this conference, she realizes that wildlife protection is important. Here she passes the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. Where what does she introduce? What does she introduce in the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act? She introduces Article 48A, says that it will be the responsibility of the state to protect the environment. She introduces in 1970 the Water Act. Later is introduced the Air Act to curb pollution. She also introduces the idea of fundamental duties. In fundamental duties, in Article 51A Clause G, she says that management of lakes, preservation of natural resources is the responsibility of every citizen of India. She also puts wildlife. She puts wildlife in the concurrent list, understanding that even states have a role in management of wildlife. When she puts wildlife in the concurrent list, she also passes the Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, so this is how forest policy has evolved in India. Ye hai wo British Act that we are still using. There is the Wildlife Protection Act when Srimati Indira Gandhi goes to the Stockholm Conference and realizes that these things are happening. Then comes the Forest Conservation Act. Ye wo time hai when we are seeing that forest is declining, but we have to exclude the local people, right? Then comes the Water Pollution and Control Act of 1974. There comes the Air, Water Pollution and Cess Act of 1977. Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1981. When we realize this approach is not working, then we go for a new approach under the Environment Protection Act. Here we include the idea of local communities in management. We think of joint forest management. When we see that, okay, this approach has worked, then we come with the, this should be Forest Rights Act. Then we come with the Forest Rights Act. And finally, we now realized that, local communities are very important. So now that you've understood this is the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. What is added here? This is happening in the background.